there are a lot of interesting things going on with the one with two parts, part 1 and 2. These are the Friends season 1 episodes 16 and 17, and I say a lot of really key elements happen in this two-parter. But for me, it's never been one of my favourites. Maybe because there are a lot of key elements in this one. Therefore, it's kind of on a pedestal. I prefer the underdog episodes that are maybe not as loved as much, because I feel like they're not as overdone. But the one with the two parts certainly are very iconic. So I'm going to kind of talk about them both at the same time, because I don't really have any separate thoughts on them. And as I said, they're not my favourites, so my thoughts probably aren't as detailed as they could be. But I will say there will be spoilers in this if you haven't seen the episodes. I will go into a little bit of detail. So Chandler's story in this doesn't really bother me. Chandler firing somebody, a really attractive employee. It's, in terms of character development from Chandler, it's one of the first times we see his vulnerability, because Chandler hides behind comedy. He does have that veil, and Chandler's usually just goofing around and making jokes, but sometimes we get to see a more serious side of his emotions. That's certainly what we have here. It doesn't really bother me, but it's interesting enough. There is a whole big life lesson in this about health insurance. Now, when I was watching this growing up, I had absolutely no idea what they were going on about, because I'm in the UK and we, thankfully have the NHS. I didn't really understand the importance of Rachel not having health insurance. It's quite gripping when they, try and switch names. They don't really know how that's going to pan out. The fact that it's set in the hospital obviously makes a lot of sense with the more important aspect of this two-parter. But I think it was a clever decision they made to put Rachel and Monica already in the hospital. I think that made some sense. With regards to Ursula, Joey and Ursula is an interesting thought. It's an interesting combination. Ursula as a character, I always like Ursula. I just like watching Phoebe interacting with Ursula, because I think Lisa Kudrow interacting with herself is just brilliant. And I thoroughly enjoy that aspect of it every time. So that's something that I liked. But again, it's not my favourite Ursula moment. It's not my favourite, certainly not my favourite Joey story. There are so many more to choose from. And then, of course, we have the big story. And that is Marcel swallowing a Scrabble tile. No, of course, I'm not being serious. Marcel, I don't like Marcel. And I don't know if it's just because I don't really like monkeys. I'm slightly scared of monkeys. When you go to a zoo and one stares at you and follows you around, it's like around the cage. It's a little intimidating. Not a big fan of them, although the capuchin is quite cute. But Marcel is in this. I don't really like Marcel. But the big story, of course, is some emotional development for Ross. This is, for me, what the entire thing was kind of building up to. And Ross has been having a lot of anxiety during, Carol and Susan, they're getting ready for the baby. Ross is kind of on the sidelines. He's having a lot of anxiety about what kind of father he will be. And because of the incident with Marcel, we have some revelations for Ross, that he realises that actually he might be a really good father after all. And I think it's for the first time where he is apprehensive about becoming a father still, but I think it's maybe the first time where we see Ross actually no longer anxious about the prospect, but actually looking forward. And I think that's a lovely little bit of character development for Ross. I think it worked out really well. So for me, that was very sweet, even though I don't like Marcel. So the whole two-parter, I enjoyed. I think they probably could have condensed this into one part. There are often two-parters, not just with Friends, but where I kind of don't care about the narrative of that two-parter, and I feel like it could have been a one-part. Similarly, there are many episodes that I love that could have definitely been a two-parter, and they just weren't. But I like these episodes, some pretty decent moments, some blah moments, but ultimately, the one with the two parts, needless to say, is pretty great.